Okay, well, hello, my name is Andrea. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And if you are coming back, thank you for watching. It means a lot if you like the. Hello, my name is Andrea. If you are new to my channel, welcome. And if you are watching again, thank you so much. And hopefully you like my content and you feel so inclined to subscribe and support. It means a lot. So I'm really excited for today's video. I have been waiting to do this. This has been the inspiration behind why I decided to make a YouTube channel to begin with, was because of my postpartum life, which was very traumatic, as I've mentioned before in another video, and it was something that was really hard for me to even talk about right after it happened because I couldn't even comprehend what happened. And now I can finally talk about it. And I think that it's empowering to share our stories, especially when it's really hard things, because we never know when somebody in our life is going to go through something similar. And it's just so nice to normalize it and to be able to have somebody that you can connect with. And I know that postpartum life is so hard for so many people, and it's not something that we usually talk about. And I think it's so important. So I always wanted to have a baby. It was something that, you grow up and like you just think life will be magical and pregnancy is so cute and everything will be great. And I honestly feel super blessed because I feel like my pregnancy was pretty uneventful. I mean, I didn't really struggle with depression at that time. I felt like, you get moody, but I think everyone does. That's pretty normal. I didn't really have a lot of morning sickness. Like, it was pretty smooth. And the delivery was amazing. I really didn't have any issues. I got an epidural and it was amazing. I highly recommend. And I had my baby and I was so happy. I felt like so relieved. And so on my side of the family, Ariana is my baby. She was not the first grandbaby, but on Jander's side, my husband, she was the first grandbaby. So we talked about, making his mom a part of the birth and coming over after having the baby. It was something that I felt inclined to do because I felt bad. I felt like she lives out of state, and it was something that we really wanted to do to give her that chance to connect with the baby. And so at the time, I really didn't think anything of it. So she came over and she stayed with us for a couple of weeks right after the baby. Like the same week the baby was born, she came. And I was doing pretty well, but as like the days progressed, I was starting to feel super, super stressed. Like I could tell that breastfeeding and taking care of the baby and the sleep deprivation and hosting someone at my house. And it was during the pandemic, so a lot of my family members and friends were not able to be as close to me at that time as I would have wanted just due to the circumstances. And my baby came early. She came 2 weeks earlier than expected. And so it wasn't really, it was just outside of our control. And so, given all of that, I feel like I was very isolated from people that I normally am really close to, like my mom. And so, having that support, like taken away from me or not feeling it as strongly as I needed, on top of like completely over exuding myself. So, I would wake up and do like early morning feeds for the baby, like breastfeeding. And then it was like 5 a.m. and everyone else was sleeping. So I thought, you know what? She's sleeping, everyone's sleeping. It's nice to have the house to myself. Let me start cleaning. Let me start cooking. Let me start doing things and being productive. Like, I like this. Without realizing, like, no, don't do that. It will take a toll on you. Like, you just had a baby. You need to rest. And so I feel like I really didn't accept the fact that I needed to rest. Like, I think it's just my pride and just my personality that I'm a go, go, go kind of person. And so, the weeks went by and then week 3 came, and suddenly like there was one specific day that was just awful. I remember that night my husband was like super tired. We were exhausted. I mean, we're first time parents. You have no idea what you're doing. Like, and I think it's just hard for everyone. And he was super supportive and helpful, but I mean, it's a new little human you're taking care of. So he was so tired that night. And so I got up to feed, and I remember hearing like vomiting coming from the bathroom. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And it was my mother-in-law. I guess she like something made her sick and she was not feeling well. So I fed the baby, I put her down, and then I went and helped her out, like my mother-in-law, and gave her like Pepto-Bismol and fluids. And like I work in healthcare, so like caregiving is what I do. And I remember like she was asleep, the baby's asleep, my husband's asleep, everyone's asleep, and I'm alone in the nursery. And suddenly like I just feel darkness engulf me, and I feel like just icky, I start to have these thoughts that I want to take my life. And I never experienced anything like that before. It was so strong. I started to cry uncontrollably and I just didn't know what was happening. Like it was just like super intense and I remember feeling like just icky. So I woke up my husband and like immediately like we called my doctor the next day and they sent an antidepressant. But little did I know that this was just the beginning. So later that morning, I started to feel like incredible paranoia. I didn't feel good in the house. I didn't want my mother-in-law anywhere near me because although I love her, like it's my mother-in-law. We don't always see things the same way and like everyone's brought up differently. Everyone does things differently and I just had a baby. I mean, honestly, like just having someone over at my house so soon after was not a good idea. So I was just like super sensitive and I didn't want her anywhere near me. And so my mom came over and took me to her house with the baby. I I went over there and I took like a little nap, but I'm going on hours and hours of no sleep, okay? Like I had been extremely sleep deprived. I was that week that this happened, I was so stressed that I remember like a side of my face getting paralyzed. Like I legit think I was getting Bell's palsy because I was so overwhelmed. Like I had not felt this stressed ever in my life. And I literally feel like my brain broke. Like it broke. So I'm at my mom's house and I take like a quick nap. And I'd been like really sensitive ever since the night before that I'd had these suicidal ideations. Like I'd just been like really like, I don't know how to explain it, like very just sensitive and emotional and paranoid and anxious. And I woke up and I remember just being like hysteria. Like I just start like screaming and crying and saying random things and like nobody could calm me down. And like the hours go by and I'm not really getting better. I'm getting worse. So by that night, my parents, my mom and my husband like make the decision like we need to call an ambulance because I was like so like disconnected from reality, like straight in like psychotic mode that I didn't want anyone to touch me. I didn't want any of my family members near me. I was like saying weird things and I just felt unsafe. So they called an ambulance and I was in the ambulance, which is also very traumatic. And I ended up going to the hospital and they ended up hospitalizing me in the psych unit. And after, resting and getting fluids, like lo and behold, I did much better the next day. I felt like myself again and I just couldn't even process what was happening because the whole time that I was having like that psychotic episode, I thought that I was in a dream. Like I really couldn't distinguish reality from like not reality. Like it was just super bizarre. I've never been on drugs, but I'd imagine that that's what it feels like. Like you're just kind of groggy and don't really have a sense of what is going on. So I did have to stay in the hospital for a couple of days, which I don't think it would have been necessary. Like given how well I recovered after, but I think I just scared everybody because it was a really bad episode. Like I was in complete emotional distress. So I don't like blame the doctors for wanting to keep me, but I did feel really bad because I was in the hospital with other people that were overcoming like mental illness, suicide, alcoholism, drug addiction. I mean, they're in the psych unit for other completely different reasons than me that's a new mom that just had like a postpartum psychotic moment. And so I felt completely disconnected from the other patients while I was there. I felt unsafe. I felt like so traumatized because it's kind of like I felt like I was in prison. I couldn't have my baby with me. I couldn't have my family. I mean, they could come visit me, but I spent a lot of time alone to rest and meditate and, recover. So, long story short, I get discharged from the hospital and they give me a bunch of medications that make me feel like a zombie. Like, I felt awful. I was having slurred speech. I was feeling like groggy. Like, I felt like I couldn't walk. I felt like I couldn't carry my baby because I felt like unstable. And I felt like every time I brought up concerns to the doctors, like, they just were not listening to me. Like, they were not taking me seriously. So, finally, after a week of being on these meds and feeling awful, I went to an emergency room, like a specific one for psychiatric patients. I talked to a psychiatrist and I just got off these meds cold turkey. And let me tell you, like, I felt much better. Like, luckily for me, that's different from other people. I think I didn't have any other psychotic episodes. Like, I was okay. I really do think that I completely, like, just exhausted my brain and my body to a point where I, like, broke and I snapped and I lost it. Like, I literally lost my mind for a little bit. And on top of like your postpartum hormones, I think it was just like such a storm, like a perfect storm, and all the stress that was going on around me and adapting to the baby. and not having like people close to me that are my support system, like it drove me to insanity. So I did feel better even though I stopped taking my medications, but obviously like when something like this happens, it's kind of a big deal. So for, my own peace of mind and that of my family, I started to look and find a provider to take over for my mental health. And she started me on a medication again, not an antipsychotic, but just like a mood stabilizer. So I actually was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and told that what had happened to me was that I had a manic episode with psychosis. And that's how I was treated. So the months went on and I started to feel better. I still had like super bad postpartum anxiety. I would have nightmares of my psychotic episode. I would have nightmares of the hospital. It was just like the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, I've worked in healthcare for 6 years prior to this. I've seen people have psychotic episodes, and I know what it feels like now to be on that other side. And I just felt so like unheard and judged, and like I just felt like I had been like labeled now as like crazy, and it was really bothering me. It wasn't until I got a hold of a center that does therapy for like family and couples and postpartum moms, which I highly, highly recommend getting a specialized therapist in postpartum, that I finally like felt like I was getting progress. And like I should backtrack a little bit. I had two psychologists or therapists that I went to right after the hospital, and I just didn't feel like I did well with them. I don't feel like I connected well. And so this was my third therapist, and like I'm happy I kept looking because she helped me so much. And my doctor, like with the medication, that still didn't feel like it was helping me. And so finally, like I found a new doctor to take over, like just as my general doctor, which I hadn't had up until this point. I had been seeing a nurse practitioner, and this new general doctor, like in my first visit, he was like, I think you're not being treated correctly. Like, I don't think you have bipolar necessarily. And I think that's why like you're not getting better. Like even though you're exercising and meditating and going to therapy, you're doing all the work, I still wasn't completely recovered. I still felt awful. It still felt like it hurt to breathe. Like I still was incredibly depressed and still having a hard time processing the psychotic episode, managing my baby, just my mood. Like I felt like crap, even though I was doing everything that I had been told would help me. So he changed my meds and specifically treated me just for generalized anxiety disorder and depression. And like almost immediately, guys, I felt so much better. It was like incredible the change that happened. And I really do feel that he was like right on, that I just wasn't being treated. I was probably misdiagnosed, which I don't blame the doctors, because I feel like when these things happen, like their job is just to take out the fire, right? You go to the ER and their job is just to like fix you temporarily, just to stabilize you. That's it. And so, like, doing this long term work and going to therapy and finding a new general doctor and really like working out like what is going on with me, I finally got the treatment that I needed. And I felt amazing. I'm still on my medication. I'm only on one medication. Since meeting this doctor, I was able to taper off the other medication that I'd been given for my mood. And now I'm just on an antidepressant that also helps with anxiety. And I feel amazing. Like I feel so great. And the reason that I'm sharing this is because this was one of the hardest things that's ever happened to me. Okay. And I've been through some pretty scary things, which in retrospect, I didn't know, but I was actually a victim of childhood sexual abuse. Okay. And so I had some trauma in my childhood that I've already worked through. Like I've already gone to therapy, but I didn't know that when you have a baby, sometimes old trauma can cause your brain to like freak out. Okay. So that is a risk factor that I had no idea. Like nobody told me that. And because I'd had a normal pregnancy, I feel like nobody expected this to happen to me. And I was so hurt. I was so sad. I felt awful that, in shame. I felt so much shame that this had happened to me, that I had been in the psych unit, that I had like lost my mind in front of like strangers and people, and I had like scared my family and friends because they'd never seen me like that. And I just felt like my self esteem like plummeted. I felt like broken. I felt like worthless. And I don't think that anyone should feel that way. So, my reason for sharing my story and telling you this and being super vulnerable is that there is hope. Like, you do not have to live with your mental illness or your trauma or whatever it is that's triggering you to be, without peace. Even like if you do have a baby and you have postpartum depression, if you have postpartum anxiety, if you do happen to have a postpartum psychotic episode, like, it is okay. Although it was like some of the darkest months to recovery, and some days I woke up and I didn't want to do anything. Like, it was so hard to keep going. It's okay. Like, I promise it'll get better, and I promise that things don't have to be this way always. If you get the right treatment, if you get the right help, and like a tribe, it was so important for me to have my family and friends that supported me through all of this, other moms that I connected with. Like, that was huge for my therapist to normalize to me, like, this is normal. It is okay to struggle after having a baby. It is okay if you get hospitalized. It is okay if you have to get on the medication. Like, that is okay. It's okay if you're not connecting to your baby right now. Like, you have a whole life ahead of you, mama. Like, things will get better. You just did something so hard, which is having a baby. That is like an incredible accomplishment. So if things are hard right now, like, please don't give up. Please know that you're not alone. And I hope that this is helpful to somebody out there that's struggling. I really hope that you can truly feel and know that you do have worth, that you are amazing, and that you're capable of overcoming this. And thank you so much for listening. If you have anything else that you'd like to share, please feel free to comment and let me know how your postpartum experience was. What do you wish that you would have done differently? What did you learn? Did you have a good experience? Did you have a bad experience? Any questions that you might have, I'm totally open. I'm not like a professional, but I do feel like I learned a lot about a lot of things having lived this experience. So thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe for more content.
I just want to mention, just to like add clarification, I don't want to add confusion, that when I did see my nurse practitioner, she was specifically seeing me for mental health reasons. And she's like a mental health provider. She's not like a general practitioner. So when I saw the doctor that I have now, that was amazing. He's a general practitioner. Okay, so nothing against like NP versus MD or anything like that. I think all medical providers are awesome. And when you make a click with someone, that's the most important thing, and that you get better and they help you. That is all.